Hey guys, tonight we begin with something that creaks just a little darker. You're not just waking up in the Middle Ages. You're waking up as the sort of person everyone whispers about when the fire burns low and the dogs start growling at shadows. Congratulations, you're the witch of the village. Don't get too excited, you don't get a broom upgrade or Hogwarts robes. What you get is suspicion, a leaky roof, and the faint sense that even the rooster outside has been told to keep an eye on you. The dawn is not golden and gentle. It's a mist-soaked gray, the kind that makes you wonder if the sun itself is nervous about showing its face. You blink awake on a bed of straw that squeaks like guilty footsteps. The blanket, a rough woolen rag, clings to you with the smell of smoke and sage. You fell asleep next to your smoldering bundle of herbs again, a common mistake. But in this world it's enough to spark a rumor that you were whispering to spirits all night. The chickens in the corner of your hut eye you suspiciously, though to be fair, they always do. You stretch, your bones crack, and in this century that sound alone could be called evidence. A neighbor once claimed that women whose joints made too much noise were secretly consorting with demons. Historians still argue whether that was a genuine belief or just medieval people being creatively paranoid. But you don't have time to debate. The bells of the village church clang out across the valley. They toll for morning prayer, but for you they sound more like a warning bell. Reminder, the church is awake now too. Your hut smells of herbs dried on the rafters, lavender for calming nerves, sage for cleansing spaces, and fennel to keep away evil spirits or, more practically, rats. You've got jars of odd powders, strings of garlic that would put an Italian kitchen to shame, and 3 cracked clay cups that never seem properly clean. None of this is unusual for a healer, yet in the minds of your neighbors, it's all tinged with menace. Why? Because you have them, and they don't. That alone is suspicious. You step outside, and the morning air bites. Fog curls low across the muddy ground. Your hut sits at the edge of the village, a location that is both convenient for foraging herbs, and not, coincidentally, exactly where people prefer strange women to live. Far enough away that they can ignore you, close enough that they can blame you when their cow gives sour milk. And this morning, as you breathe in the damp chill, you can almost feel the weight of every sideways glance you'll receive once you walk down that muddy road. Now, let's be real. In modern times, your routine would look wholesome with herbs, natural remedies, mindful dawn rituals. Instagram would love you. But here, it's evidence. You gather a bundle of dried nettles by the doorway, thinking about breakfast. Medieval peasants start their day with pottage and ale. You chew a root of angelica to clear your head, and that alone will get someone muttering. Already, you hear a dog bark in the distance, a rooster crows, and somewhere, you know a villager is muttering. She was up before sunrise again. You know what that means. Spoiler, they don't know what it means, but they'll say it anyway. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some medieval records claimed witches were marked by the smell of smoke herbs or unusual perfumes. So basically, you smell like every hipster tea shop today. Historians still argue whether this was a genuine attempt to identify witches, or just a convenient way to accuse your eccentric aunt who liked rosemary too much. Either way, you can't exactly stop smelling like smoke when your entire heating and cooking system is literally smoke, so you pull your shawl tighter and trudge toward the little stream to wash your hands. Mist beads your hair, the cold water stings, and behind you, you feel eyes watching. No, not demons, not fairies. Your neighbor, the one with 5 kids and a cow that hasn't been giving milk, is standing there, arms folded, glaring. To him, your herbs look like spells, your smoke like curses, your muttering morning prayer like a pact. You'd wave, but that only makes things worse. This is your dawn, not just another morning, but another round in the endless game of survival. Every cough in the village, every spoiled loaf, every unlucky birth can be traced back to you in someone's imagination, and all you did was wake up. So you gather your shawl, straighten your back, and step forward. The witch's day has begun. You leave the bedchamber behind, or at least try to, but your nose pulls you toward the next scene before your feet even know where they're going. The scent is unmistakable: roasted meat, spiced wine, and something faintly sweet, like candied fruit left too long in the sun. You follow it down a stone hallway, the kind with torches that sputter in a way that makes you wonder if they're actually safe, and step into the great hall. It is not mealtime in the usual sense. It is always mealtime here. The long oak table is already set with pewter plates and silver goblets, though many of them aren't quite clean, a sign that the last feast blurred seamlessly into the next. The king, you're told, believed that food was a divine blessing that should never be imprisoned by schedules. If you wanted goose at midnight or cherries in February, he'd make it happen. The fact that cherries in February meant importing them at ruinous expense from the Mediterranean, a minor inconvenience. The hall smells heavy, not bad, exactly, but intense, like a spice market collapsed into a butcher's shop. A boar's head sits at one end of the table, its mouth stuffed with a lemon and its eyes replaced with polished glass beads. It's decorative, but also unnervingly lifelike, as if it might lunge forward if you lean in too close. Next to it is a pie, not just any pie, one with live birds inside. Yes, that's not a myth. Historical records show that medieval banquets sometimes featured pies that, when cut open, released live animals as a sort of entertainment. Whether they were then cooked afterward is a detail historians prefer not to dwell on. You glance toward the king's chair. It's taller than the others, not just in height but in personality. Its backrest is carved with grapevines and smiling satyrs, the kind of imagery that leaves little to the imagination about the hall's preferred mood. Draped across it is a fur cloak, possibly wolf, possibly something rarer. The king isn't here right now, but his presence lingers in the form of half-drunk goblets, discarded napkins, and the faint echo of laughter that still seems to vibrate in the rafters. The servants, and there are dozens, move like actors in a slow, continuous play. Some are carrying platters of roasted venison. Others are topping up goblets with mead so thick it clings to the cup's edge before reluctantly sliding down. There's music, too. Not the lively jig-around table kind, but slow lute strumming, meant to blend with the clink of cutlery and the murmur of voices. One historical account, written by a visiting Italian diplomat, describes a night here when the feast lasted so long the candles burned out twice, and the king simply had the chandeliers refilled with fresh tallow, declaring, "The night ends when we tire, not when the sun says so." Historians still argue whether this was a sign of decadent confidence or of a ruler completely disconnected from reality, possibly both. Your eyes land on something at the far end of the table, a stack of small golden dishes, each holding what looks like a quail egg dusted with powdered sugar. You're informed these are candied almonds sculpted to look like eggs. Why? Because the king enjoys the confusion, a servant whispers. That sums up the entire scene, a deliberate mix of opulence and mischief. At one point, a servant hurries past you, carrying an enormous silver tureen. You glance inside. It's stew, yes, but with slices of lemon, and is that cinnamon bark floating in it? This king's kitchen didn't just borrow flavors from distant lands. It swallowed entire cuisines whole and mashed them into something only he could love. Whether his guests loved it was irrelevant. This was his hall, his feast, his rules. You notice that there's no single main course. Dishes arrive in no particular order, sometimes repeating, sometimes vanishing after just a few bites have been served. It's chaos disguised as generosity, and in the center of the chaos, a single unoccupied chair waits for the king to return, the firelight dancing across its carved satyrs, daring you to imagine what will happen when he sits down again. Somewhere in the corner, a drunk courtier is dozing off against a barrel, his goblet still in hand. You realize with a small smile that in this place, the feast doesn't end because the guests are full. It ends because the king decides the night, or morning, or afternoon, has been sufficiently entertained. Until then, the food flows, the wine pours, and time politely looks the other way. You step out of your hut, the door creaking like a guilty conscience, and immediately you feel it. Eyes. Not the gentle glance of friendly neighbors, not even the polite half-nods of fellow peasants on a weary morning. No, this is sharper, heavier, the kind of staring that clings like cobwebs. Villagers' eyes crawl over you as though they are weighing every gesture, every step, every twitch of your fingers. You are not just walking down a muddy path. You are walking through layers of suspicion woven tighter than the wool on your cloak. And honestly, you haven't even had breakfast yet. The morning air should be refreshing. Cool mist rolling in from the fields, but instead, it feels stale because gossip has already poisoned it. Every stare is like a whispered accusation wrapped in invisible parchment. Did you see what she was doing last night? Why was she up so late? Didn't she walk past the cow shed just before old Tom's cow fell sick? You want to shout that the cow probably just ate moldy hay, but you know how this game works. Logic has no place here. A single unlucky coincidence is sometimes all it takes for your neighbors to connect dots that don't even exist. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers truly believed every odd illness was the work of witches, or whether witch talk was just a convenient way to explain what they couldn't fix but to you. In this moment, theory feels irrelevant. The stares are real enough. Your neighbor, Agnes, adjusts her headscarf in a way that looks entirely ordinary, but you catch the way her eyes flicker downward, taking in your shoes, or rather, the mud stains on them. To her, it's not just mud. No, to her, those marks might be signs that you've wandered into the woods at night, and everyone knows the woods are the devil's living room. You remember last winter, when a fox stole a chicken from Agnes's yard. She swore she saw strange lights near your hut that same week. Strange lights. Yes, Agnes, it was called a thunderstorm, not a demonic rave. But try telling her that. You keep walking, trying to focus on the rhythm of your steps. Squelch, squelch, through the wet earth. But then you pass the blacksmith's house, and there he is, leaning on his hammer, arms folded, pretending to look at the sky while clearly keeping one eye fixed on you. He scratches his beard as if he's pondering whether your last glance at his anvil cursed it. His apprentice once burned himself badly while working the forge, and guess whose name got whispered as the cause? Yours. Because apparently you control fire with a glare. If only. You can't even control your fireplace. Half the time your bread burns into charcoal, while the villagers gossip about how witches can make flames dance. If they ever tasted your cooking, they'd know you have zero supernatural power in the kitchen. A child points at you from across the street. Just a child, too young to know better. But kids repeat what parents mutter. That's her, the boy says, tugging at his mother's sleeve. That's the one who talks to cats. You would laugh if it weren't so dangerous. Yes, you have a cat. Nearly everyone does. Cats keep rats away, and rats spread plague. Yet here you are, suspected because your cat meows louder than others. Medieval logic at its finest. Save the village from pestilence, and they'll reward you by calling you a witch. Historians still argue whether cats truly suffered mass killings because of witch paranoia, or if those stories were exaggerated later. But you don't need a debate. You just need these people to stop staring at your tabby like it's your demonic sidekick. As you move further into the market square, the weight of suspicion doesn't lighten, it deepens. People aren't just looking, they're calculating. Who was sick recently? Which cow miscarried? Whose beer went sour in the cask? The answers to all those questions seem to orbit you like flies around a wound. And in a way, this makes sense. In a terrible, unfair kind of way. Villagers in the Middle Ages didn't have microscopes or medical journals. They didn't know bacteria existed. They lived in a world where disasters were constant and explanations were scarce. When their bread molded, it wasn't bad storage, it was you. When hail destroyed the crops, it wasn't weather patterns, it was you. You became the walking, breathing, endlessly convenient explanation for all their failures. And the thing is, you can't win. Smile too brightly, and you're hiding something. Stay too quiet, and you're plotting. Help someone heal with a simple herbal remedy, and suddenly your knowledge looks suspicious. Refuse to help, and suddenly you're cruel, another sign of witchly coldness. Do nothing at all, and you're suspicious simply for existing. It's like living in a medieval reality show where the prize is not getting burned at the stake, and the audience is everyone you've ever known. Armed with gossip instead of votes, you try to focus on the sensory world, because the stairs are unbearable. The clop of hooves on cobblestones, the salty temps of cured fish at a market stall, the crackling laughter of two old men playing dice. But it's no good there. Laughter falters when you pass. The dice clatter to the ground. One of them mutters something about bad luck. Dice, luck, you, which it's all one tangled knot in their minds. Never mind that luck is a fickle thing in every century. To them, if the dice roll poorly while you're around, the conclusion writes itself. Some part of you wants to shout back, to call their superstition absurd, to ask them how exactly you managed to curse their barley crop while also fetching water and mending clothes and chopping firewood. But you don't shout, you know better. Witches in stories always get the last word, but witches in villages often don't get words at all. They get silence, fear, and then flames. You keep your mouth shut, because in this world, every word you speak could become another rope in the noose. As you move closer to the well, you notice 3 women clustered together. They pause, mid-conversation, lean in toward each other, and whisper. Their eyes flicker toward you like arrows. You can't hear the words, but you don't need to. You already know the script. She looked too long at my baby. She gathered herbs at dusk. She doesn't attend every mass. Each whisper adds another stone to the pile of suspicion. And the worst part, these are women just like you, peasants carrying buckets, and grief, and aching backs. But fear has a way of turning neighbors into prosecutors. In a world where being accused could save someone else from suspicion, betrayal is almost a survival tactic. And here's the darkest truth. Sometimes villagers didn't even need to believe their own accusations. Sometimes it was politics, or jealousy, or simple boredom. Historians still argue whether witch trials were more about genuine fear of sorcery, or about social control. But either way, gossip was the first step in the machinery, and gossip is everywhere right now. It trickles through the square like a poisonous river. You feel it in every glance, every mutter, every poorly hidden smirk. You steady yourself, gripping your bucket tighter. You tell yourself not to rush, not to look guilty, not to feed their paranoia with your own fear. But your heart races anyway, thumping like the church bell. Because you know this. One day, one whisper too many, one unlucky coincidence, and all these stairs could turn into something far worse. And there's no way to walk through this village without wondering which stair will be the one that finally condemns you. You shuffle into the chill of the morning pasture, breath puffing out in tiny clouds that make you look like a dragon who hasn't had enough coffee. Not that coffee exists for you yet. If it did, half of Europe would probably accuse you of witchcraft for brewing it. Instead, you're clutching a little bundle of herbs, tied up with twine, muttering a rhyme under your breath that you half remember from your grandmother. Supposedly, it helps keep the cows producing milk. Supposedly, it wards off the evil eye. Supposedly it works better if you spit 3 times over your left shoulder and don't trip over a rock in the process. The problem with supposedly is that nobody ever agrees on who said it first, but everyone's ready to blame you if the charm doesn't work. You run your hand along the cow's side. the animal shifting lazily, her hide cold and damp from dew. She blinks at you with big brown eyes that say absolutely nothing about witchcraft, but plenty about how unimpressed she is by your ritual. Still, you whisper, milk flows steady, cows stay ready, harm be gone, by dawn, be done. It rhymes. Badly. But rhyming is half the battle when you're doing charms. Because if it sounds like poetry, villagers are more likely to believe it has power. That, and nobody wants to admit they can't remember the words themselves, so they lean on you to keep the oral tradition alive. Fact. In medieval Europe, charms and folk prayers were often mixtures of Latin phrases, Christian invocations, and much older pagan sayings. A farmer might cross himself, then chant a rhyme about Thor's hammer, and still sprinkle salt in the corners of the barn just in case. Historians still argue whether this was true magic or just cultural habit. The church, of course, wasn't thrilled. Anything that smelled faintly of superstition got labeled suspicious, and suspicious usually meant dangerous. But to the villagers, a whispered rhyme was as necessary as feeding the animals. If your cow dried up, your family starved. If repeating words into the dawn air kept the milk flowing, you'd do it even if it meant looking silly. The cow lets out a low moo, the kind that vibrates your ribs like an old church organ. You reach for the pail, the clang of tin sharp against the soft crunch of frost under your feet. The rhythm of milking is steady. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. You fall into a kind of trance, repeating the rhyme softly. A rooster crows somewhere in the village. Late, as usual. He's more of a brunch rooster than a morning one. You smirk to yourself. If anyone asks, you'll say the charm worked. If the milk is thin or slow, you'll tell them the devil's shadow fell across the field. Either way, you remain the interpreter of fate. That's power, and power is dangerous. There's a fringe tidbit scholars love to bring up. Some early witch trial records show women being accused of stealing milk, not by hand, but by magic. Supposedly, a witch could tie knots in a rope, then untie them one by one to draw milk straight from a cow's udder, even if the animal was miles away. Some stories claimed witches milked axes, stools, or even a piece of cloth as if they were cows. Picture that. You're in your kitchen, and your neighbor is wringing a dish towel into a bucket of milk. Creepy, absolutely. Scientifically accurate. Not even a little. But when cows stopped producing, people didn't look at the animal's health or diet. They looked at you. The problem is, villagers hover. Out of the corner of your eye, you notice two of them, Hans and Greta. No relation to the fairy tale leaning on the fence, watching. Their eyes are narrowed, lips tight. You know what they're thinking. Is she muttering a prayer or a curse? Is she blessing the cow or binding it? Every syllable you whisper becomes a potential weapon in their minds. If the milk turns sour, tomorrow, they'll swear it's because of your secret words. Never mind that the bucket hasn't been cleaned in 3 weeks and smells faintly of moldy turnips. Rational explanations are as rare here as soap. You raise your voice just a touch, adding a line about God's grace, keeping the herd safe. It's a careful dance. You lace Christian imagery into older charms, so nobody can accuse you outright. The church might side-eye you, but the peasants will nod approvingly because, hey, you remembered to mention God. Historians still argue whether women like you were sincerely faithful or just tactical. Maybe both. Faith is survival, but so is pretending. The cow shifts again, flicking her tail across your face with the precision of a medieval whip. You sputter, wipe your cheek, and keep milking. Thanks, Bessie, you mutter. Another joke. To yourself, though here in the 14th century, nobody has heard of sarcastic cow humor. The villagers don't laugh. But you do, because if you can't laugh at being slapped by a cowtail at 6 in the morning, you're not going to make it through the rest of the day. Your bucket is finally half full, a pale, frothy sea, sloshing. As you set it aside, you sprinkle a pinch of dried herbs over the pail, another protective measure. In reality, it's just ground rosemary you saved from last summer. But to the watching villagers, it looks exotic, mystical, dangerous. You know how fast rumor spreads. Tonight, someone will whisper that you made the cow give double milk. Someone else will claim you cursed it. Someone will insist you muttered in the devil's tongue, even though you were just rhyming badly about udders. By the end of the week, 3 different stories will exist, and none of them will be true. And here's the thing, you can't stop them. That's how power works, here whispered. Slippery, impossible to hold in your hands. You lean on your walking stick, stretch your back, and watch the frost melt into the grass. A blackbird caws from a branch. In the distance, church bells ring for morning prayers. Time to head back, bucket in hand, pretending you're just another villager going about her chores. But deep down, you know every rhyme you uttered is now part of your reputation. Today, you were just milking a cow. Tomorrow, someone might swear you were milking shadows. And when the line between blessing and curse is that thin, every word you speak becomes evidence. Bread, beer, and whispers. Even breakfast tastes like someone's watching you sit at the rough wooden table. The one that wobbles if you lean too hard on the left side. Breakfast is laid out in front of you. Coarse bread, last night's ale, gone a little flat, and maybe a hunk of cheese, if the mice didn't get to it first. A simple meal, yet even here, even in the quiet of your own cottage, the weight of other people's stares presses down. Bread and beer might fill the stomach, but suspicion fills the air. You tear off a piece of bread, its crust hard enough to double as a weapon, and chew slowly. Grain is everything in your village. A bad harvest means hunger, hunger means blame, and blame usually finds its way to you. People don't always accuse you directly, but they watch, always watching. If the bread tastes bitter, someone mutters that you cursed the fields. If it rises unevenly, maybe you whispered a hex into the dough. Forget that half the flour is full of weevils. Reality never competes with rumor and bureau. Beer is life here. Water isn't safe. Not really. So every villager drinks ale from dawn to dusk. Even children sip weak brews because it's safer than a cup of river water. Brewing is as common as breathing. And women, not men, are the brewers. That means you. That means power. And power, again, is dangerous. A woman with a cauldron, stirring grain and herbs, muttering over steam. To you, it's Tuesday. To them, it's witchcraft. Historians actually have a field day with this one. The word brewster was often female, because brewing beer was women's work. They brewed for the household, sometimes sold the surplus. But here's the kicker. As brewing became profitable, men muscled in, taking over taverns and alehouses, pushing women aside. And how did they justify it? By painting the female brewer as suspicious, dirty, untrustworthy. Some scholars even argue that the stereotype of a witch with a cauldron and a pointy hat comes partly from female brewers. The tall hats were used in markets to stand out, and cats kept the mice away from grain stores. Fast forward a few centuries, and boom, suspicion bakes itself into folklore. You take a sip of ale, bitter on your tongue, and glance at the door. There's always a chance someone might stop by. You'd think people would leave you alone in the morning, but no, curiosity doesn't sleep. And sure enough, outside voices murmur. The low hum of gossip seeps through the cracks in your wall. Like smoke, they're talking about you. They always are. Her bread never burns, one whispers, even when the oven smokes. She brews faster than any of us, another replies. Must be a trick in it. You roll your eyes. The secret is simply that you clean your oven and stir your mash evenly. But explain that, and they'll just nod knowingly, convinced you're lying. Logic is suspicious. Efficiency is suspicious. Women being good at something, definitely suspicious. Still, you pretend not to hear. You chew, swallow, sip, repeat. Breakfast becomes a performance, an act of being normal. Don't eat too quickly, or they'll say you're greedy. Don't eat too slowly, or they'll say you're lost in spells. Don't spill crumbs, because crumbs invite rats, and rats mean plague, and plague means, well, you. Every gesture carries meaning when people have already decided you're different. Let's not romanticize. This breakfast isn't quiet contemplation, it's survival theater. Bread and beer are your props, the stage is your table, and the audience is the entire village. You can almost hear the whispers circling like smoke rings. She's hiding something. She knows more than she should. She's not one of us. You remember yesterday, when old Marta stopped by. She asked casually if your bread recipe had special blessings in it, because hers never seemed to rise right. You told her, need longer, keep the dough warm, don't rush. She nodded, but her eyes narrowed. She didn't believe you. She wanted you to say yes. I whispered to the dough, under a new moon, and that's why it worked. Because then, if her own bread failed again, she could blame you, instead of her own 2 hands. That's the dangerous trade of this life. Even when you give answers, people twist them into mystery. The ale in your mug catches the light. Foam slides down the side, a little river of gold. You think about how many times this simple drink has been your shield. When someone's sick, you add herbs to it: chamomile, yarrow, sage. They call it medicine if it works, poison if it doesn't. When someone's anxious, you give them a cup, and they swear it calmed their nerves. They don't know it's the alcohol. They think it's you. So here you sit, caught between healer and heretic, between baker and blasphemer, between brewer and witch. The whispers outside grow louder. Someone laughs. The sound cuts sharp, like a knife against your skin. They don't have to say your name. You know it's about you. The laughter always is. You sigh. Break another piece of bread, dunk it in the ale, and chew thoughtfully. Let them talk. The more they whisper, the more power they give you. Fear feeds authority, even if it's fragile. But here's the truth no one admits. You're afraid too. Afraid every meal could be your last in this cottage. Afraid the wrong glance, the wrong word, the wrong swallow of beer could tip the scales. Afraid that someday the whispers will turn into a knock on the door, and the knock will come with torches. Yet you eat, you drink, you carry on. Because if you stopped, if you let fear starve you, they'd win before the trial even started. You may not control the rumors, but you control the bread in your hand, the ale in your mug, and the way you hold your gaze steady when they watch. Breakfast ends, but the whispers don't. They never do. A knock at the door. A mother begs you to cure her child's fever. The knock comes when the bread crusts are still on the table, crumbs scattered like tiny bones across the wood. It's sharp, insistent, 3 raps that echo through the cottage, as if the whole village were standing outside. You freeze for a heartbeat, mug halfway to your lips. A knock can mean anything here. A neighbor needing herbs, a beggar looking for ale, or worse, a priest with suspicion wrapped around him like a cloak. You set the mug down slowly, careful not to spill, and stand. Your bare feet press against the packed dirt floor, cold seeping into your bones. Another knock, this one louder, trembling on the edge of desperation. Whoever it is won't wait long. When you pull open the door, the morning light floods in, gray and thin. A woman stands there, her face pale, her shawl pulled tight against the chill. She clutches something in her arms, wrapped in a tattered blanket. It takes you a moment to realize it's a child, a little boy, his head lolling against her shoulder, his cheeks flushed bright with fever. Please, she whispers, voice cracking. He burns. I don't know what else to do. You step back, gesturing her inside. The villagers watch from a distance. You can feel their eyes on the back of your neck. They always watch. A woman crossing your threshold is a story waiting to be told. By tonight, the tale will spread. She went to the witch's house. She asked for help. She bargained with the devil. The truth won't matter. But right now, the truth is a sick child. Too hot, too weak, slipping away. She lays him gently on your bed, the rough straw mattress creaking under his weight. His small chest rises and falls quickly, each breath shallow, labored. You touch his forehead, and the heat nearly scalds your palm. Fever like this doesn't play fair. It takes quickly, burns away strength, leaves bones hollow. You glance at the mother. Her eyes are wide, wet with fear. The priest says it's God's will, she whispers. But I can't just watch him. There it is again, the line you walk daily. Faith and desperation. If the child lives, you're a healer. If he dies, you're a heretic. Either way, the priest's words weigh more than yours. You swallow the thought, kneel by the bed, and reach for your basket of herbs. Sage, chamomile, willow bark, each bundle tied with string, hung to dry from your rafters. To you, they are medicine. To others, they are suspicious talismans dangling, like curses. You crush a few willow bark strips, the bitter smell filling the air. It's a pain reliever, though nobody here knows the word. They'll call it a cooling charm. You steep it in hot water, stirring slowly. Steam curls up, wrapping the room in warmth and scent. The mother watches you, lips pressed tight. You can feel her fear like a weight. She doesn't want to be here, doesn't want to trust you. But desperation has sharper claws than superstition. Make him drink, you say softly, handing her the cup. She hesitates, then lifts it to her son's lips. He sips weakly, the liquid dribbling down his chin. You whisper under your breath, words you half believe, half invent. Cool the fire, still the breath, let the body rest. The rhyme isn't magic, not really, but it calms the mother, and maybe it calms you. 2 hours pass. The child stirs, restless. You wipe his forehead with a damp cloth, change the blanket when it soaks through with sweat. The fever climbs, then dips, then climbs again. It's a battle, and you are both soldier and general, fighting with herbs and prayers instead of swords. Outside, whispers gather. Shadows flicker past your window. The villagers are circling, drawn by the scent of desperation. They know someone is inside. They want to see if she comes out with hope or despair. They want proof, one way or another, of what you are. At one point a voice calls through the door. Careful, Marta. She traded his soul to save his body. You grit your teeth, ignoring it. The mother flinches, but stays. That takes courage, or maybe just fear of losing her child. By evening, the fever breaks. It doesn't vanish, but it loosens its grip. The boy's breaths grow deeper, steadier. His cheeks flush less brightly. He opens his eyes once, just for a moment, and whispers, something too faint to catch. The mother sobs, clutching him to her chest. Relief floods her face, and for the first time all day, she smiles. She turns to you, words trembling. Bless you, truly, bless you. You nod, though you know better. Blessings don't stick. By tomorrow, someone will say the child recovered in spite of you, not because of you. Or worse, they'll say you only healed him because you caused the sickness in the first place. After all, isn't that what witches do? Poison, then cure, curse, then lift? Spin both sides of the coin until nobody remembers which is real. As she leaves, the shadows outside scatter, melting into the dusk. The whispers follow her, clinging to her shawl like burrs. She will pay for this, you know. The village doesn't forgive easily. She'll be accused of consorting with you, of letting the devil's breath into her home, but she won't regret it, not when her son sleeps easier tonight. You close the door, leaning your forehead against the wood. Another day survived, another life touched by your hands, another secret added to the ledger of whispers that grows, longer with every knock at your door. And you wonder, not for the first time, how many more knocks you'll hear before one comes with fire. Mixing the poultice, your kitchen smells of sage, garlic, and danger. The cottage is quiet again, though silence here is never empty. It hums with the crackle of your hearth fire, the whisper of herbs swaying overhead, the faint drip of water from the roof beam where last night's rain sneaked in. You sit at the table, the same table that hosted bread and beer this morning, but now it's a battlefield of ingredients. Sage leaves, dried stiff and gray-green. Garlic bulbs, their papery skins flaking. A clay bowl, rough as sand beneath your fingertips. A poultice, the simplest thing in the world, if you believe your hands. The most dangerous thing in the world, if you believe your neighbors. You start with sage. Its sharp, bitter scent cuts the air the moment you crush the leaves. Villagers burn sage to chase away foul spirits, though most barely know why. You know the truth. Sage is antiseptic, a cleaner, a healer. But say that out loud, and no one listens. Science doesn't exist here, only stories do. To them, you are muttering spells when you grind the leaves with your mortar and pestle. The garlic follows, thick, oily, biting. You peel each clove carefully, the skins clinging stubbornly to your fingers. Garlic is both food and magic in the village mind. They hang it over doors to ward off sickness, to frighten away devils. You mash it into a paste, and the smell fills the room. Pungent, sharp, unforgettable. Combined with sage, it makes a paste thick as mud, glistening like resin. To you, it's medicine. To them, it's witchcraft. The truth is stranger. It's both. Garlic fights infection. Sage soothes inflammation. Together, they've saved lives in ways no priest's blessing ever did. But intention shapes perception. When you rub this paste on a wound and it heals, people nod uneasily. She has power. When it festers, they whisper, she cursed it. Either way, it's never just herbs in their eyes. It's you. Always you. You stir the mixture, the wooden pestle scraping the bowl, each sound loud in the cottage. You whisper, not because the herbs need it, but because the people do. A rhyme half remembered, half created. Bind the heat, draw the pain, close the wound, make whole again. Is it a charm, or just a rhythm to guide your hands? You no longer know. Maybe it doesn't matter. The rhyme isn't for the plants, it's for the humans. The sick, the desperate, the fearful. They need to hear words alongside action, or else they don't believe in healing. They don't trust what they can't wrap in story, and stories stick. The room is thick with scent now. Sage sharpens the air like a blade. Garlic saturates it like smoke. Anyone walking past your window would smell it, would wrinkle their nose, would mutter, the witch is brewing. It doesn't matter if you're making medicine or dinner. The line between stew and spell is thin as spider silk. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow. The heat of the fire mixes with the heat of the herbs, pressing down like a hand on your chest. You wonder if this is how fear feels for them, stifling, inescapable, undeniable. For you, it's just another day. There's danger in this bowl, yes, but not the kind they imagine. The danger is being seen. If someone bursts in now, they won't see sage and garlic, they'll see evidence. The kind that turns whispers into accusations, accusations into trials. The kind that burns faster than firewood. You remember the last time, a boy with a festering cut. You spread poultice on his arm, wrapped it with linen, prayed he'd heal. He did, but not before the wound blackened, scared everyone half to death. His mother swore your paste had cursed him. Only when the swelling broke and pus drained did they grudgingly admit he was saved. Even then, she wouldn't thank you. Gratitude can be as dangerous as blame. Both mark you as different. You scrape the bowl clean, shaping the paste into a cloth pouch, tying it tight. This poultice will go to Marta, the same woman whose son you saved from fever this morning. She will use it on his chest, draw out the sickness, keep him breathing steady, and she will never tell anyone she got it from you. She'll say she prayed harder, or that the fever broke on its own. She has to. To admit otherwise is to condemn you both. Still, she'll come again. They always do. In secret, in shame, in fear. They'll knock at night, whisper through cracks, press coins into your hand as if bribing fate itself, and you'll give them what they need, because you can't not. Because healing isn't just your work, it's your curse. The poultice cools in your hands, soft and damp, smelling of earth and danger. You tuck it into a clay jar, seal it with wax, set it on the shelf, among dozens of others. Each jar holds a story, a burn, a cut, a cough, a bruise from a drunken husband, a rash from sleeping in damp straw. Each jar is a life touched by your hands, though few will ever admit it. You sit back, staring at your shelves. Sage, garlic, honey, vinegar, bundles of dried lavender, sprigs of thyme, handfuls of nettles. A pharmacy centuries before anyone would call it that. Knowledge older than books, older than priests, older than the fear that now clings to it. Danger doesn't live in the herbs. It lives in the gap between what you know and what they believe. The garlic smell clings to your fingers, no matter how much you rub them clean. You bring your hand to your face, inhale deeply, strong, pungent, alive. Some would call it foul, but to you, it smells like survival, like stubbornness, like proof that even in a world where whispers can kill, you still choose to heal, that the poultice is ready. The danger never leaves. And outside, the village waits, always waiting, always watching. Debate of intent. Historians still argue if you're healer or heretic. The candlelight flickers on the cottage walls, long shadows stretching across the rough plaster like grasping hands. You sit alone at the table, grinding dried chamomile with your mortar, but your mind isn't in the rhythm of your hands. It drifts further, beyond the cottage, beyond the whispers outside, even beyond this century. It drifts to the endless debate that has always surrounded you. What are you really? To your neighbors, the answer changes with the wind. Yesterday, you were the healer who soothed the fever. Tomorrow, you may be the witch who curses cows until they stop giving milk. They live in the space between gratitude and suspicion, never fully leaning one way. But centuries later, historians will take up the same argument, Ailey with fancier words and printed books. Some will say, she was a healer, a wise woman, a midwife, who kept traditions alive, while men wrote the rules of medicine. Others will sneer, nonsense. She was a fraud at best, a heretic at worst. Half her remedies worked by accident, the other half killed more than they cured. You don't hear those voices yet, of course, but they are coming. They always are. The villages debate right now. In your own lifetime, the villagers debate your intent with every step you take. Marta says you saved her child. The priest says you only postponed God's will. The blacksmith swears your charm kept his cow alive through winter. His wife mutters that the cow was fine until you touched it. Gratitude becomes suspicion in the blink of an eye. Every poultice you mix, every rhyme you whisper, every herb you hang to dry becomes evidence of kindness or evidence of witchcraft. Depending on who is telling the story, the same act can prove two opposite truths. Heal a child and you're a saint. Heal a child and you're a sinner. You think about this as you grind chamomile. The yellow flowers crumble easily, their sweet smell rising in the air. To you, they're just medicine, calming nerves, soothing stomachs. But you can already imagine the whispers. She burns flowers in bowls. She chants over them. She feeds strange powders to the sick. They can twist anything, and they will. The historians debate centuries later. Men and women in quiet libraries will argue over your intentions as if they could crawl into your mind. They will flip through records of trials, testimonies, fragments of lives destroyed, and declare what you meant when you ground sage with garlic. The sympathetic ones will say, she was a product of her time. She carried ancient folk knowledge. She gave people comfort when official medicine was cruel or absent. She was persecuted because she was a woman who dared to have power outside the church's control. The harsher voices will argue, Her remedies were superstition. She offered placebo more than cure. She thrived on fear, positioning herself as necessary in a world of ignorance. She wasn't healer or heretics, she was opportunist, but none of them will ever smell what your cottage smells. Like tonight, none will feel garlic stick to their fingers or sage sting their tongue. None will know the heaviness of a knock at the door at midnight. They'll only see ink on parchment, detached and neat, and yet, in their debate, your ghost will linger. Between two worlds, the truth, as always, lies in the gray. You are healer, and you are danger. You cure fevers, and you frighten priests. You cradle life in your hands, and you remind the village how fragile that life is. You're both blessing and curse, depending on whose story survives. Your intent is clear to you. You heal because you must, because you know things others do not, because your hands remember how to soothe when nothing else does. But intent doesn't always survive history. Perception does. In the corner of your cottage sits your secret notebook, pages filled with scratches and symbols. Some are recipes, some are prayers, some are nonsense words you made up just to make the sick feel like you'd done something. If anyone finds it, they'll see heresy. But maybe centuries later, a scholar will open it and see science hiding between the lines. One will call it witchcraft. Another will call it proto-medicine. Both will argue endlessly, and neither will be wrong. Living under the question, what does it mean to live a life constantly under debate? It means you never truly rest. When you hand over a jar of poultice, you're not just handing over herbs, handing over a story that will be retold, reshaped, maybe twisted. When you whisper a rhyme, you're not just soothing nerves, you're giving the village new words to hurl at you in fear. Some nights, you wonder if it would be easier to stop, to let them rely on prayers alone, to let fever and plague take who it will. Let the priest answer the midnight knocks for once. But you never do, because when a mother sets her burning child on your bed, you cannot turn away, even knowing tomorrow she might stand in the square and deny you ever helped her. So you keep healing, not for thanks, not for safety, maybe not even for the child. You heal because it's what you do. Because if you don't, then what are you? The future's judgments centuries from now. Tourists will visit reconstructed cottages like yours, gawking at dried herbs and old cauldrons, as if they hold the secrets of the past. They'll buy books with titles like Healers or Heretics, and The Real Witches of Europe. Professors will give lectures in wormholes about the liminal position of women like you. They'll argue about your power, your oppression, your knowledge, your myth. They will debate your intent endlessly, but you sitting here with chamomile dust on your fingers don't care about their words. You care about the fevered child, the cow that won't give milk, the bruised woman who slipped in the dark but won't admit her husband struck her. Your intent isn't theory, it's practice, it's survival, and yet, one day, your intent will no longer matter. Only the debate will. Market day tension. You trade herbs, coins, and uneasy glances. The sun rises lazy over the thatched rooftops, spilling gold onto muddy lanes. It's market day. The one day in 7 when the village isn't just a collection of cottages and smoke, but a breathing, shouting creature with too many arms and too many eyes. From your doorway, you can already hear it. The bleating of sheep, the clatter of carts, the haggling voices of men arguing over turnips, as if the fate of kingdoms hangs on their price. Somewhere, a dog barks, chasing a goose that definitely does not want chasing. The smell gods, the smell is part roasted meat, part manure, part spilled ale. You tighten your cloak around you, tucking a small bundle of herbs under your arm. Dried sage, wild thyme, a few sprigs of lavender tied with string. To anyone else, it's weeds. To you, it's coin. But coin isn't the only thing you'll trade today. Entering the market, when you step into the market square, it's like plunging into a river. You're swept along whether you want to be or not. Farmers shout the weight of their potatoes. Bakers hold up steaming loaves. Children dart under carts, sticky with honey stolen from stalls. And through it all, the eyes dot, always the eyes. Some glance at you quickly, then away, as if eye contact alone might curse them. Others linger too long, measuring you the way a man measures a wolf on the edge of the woods. Dangerous, but fascinating. And a few nod at you with barely concealed relief. Those are the ones who know you've saved them, or someone they love, but would never dare admit it aloud. You walk slowly, careful not to appear hurried or guilty. Too quick, and they'll say you're hiding something. Too slow, and they'll say you're hunting souls. There's no correct pace, but you've learned to walk the narrow line anyway. The first trade farmer approaches you, hat in hand, his eyes darting left and right. He waits until his wife is busy haggling over onions before he speaks. "My back," he mutters, bending slightly as if to demonstrate. "Like fire in the mornings, can't lift the plow." You slide your bundle from under your arm and select a sprig of thyme, crushing it gently between your fingers. The scent rises sharp and green. "Boil it in beer," you tell him softly. "Drink before bed." He nods, slips a coin into your palm so quickly, it's almost magic. The exchange takes less than 10 seconds, but in those seconds, you both risk everything. If the priest saw, if his wife saw, if anyone wanted to ruin you, it would be enough. You pocket the coin and move on. Behind you, the farmer straightens, still bent by pain, but already a little lighter, as if hope itself weighs less than doubt. The watchful priest at the edge of the square, the church bell tolls, slow and heavy. The priest walks among the stalls, his black robe brushing the mud, his eyes scanning, not for vegetables, not for cloth, for you. He sees you, of course. He always does. His mouth tightens, his hand lingers on the cross at his chest. To him, every herb in your bundle is proof of sin. Healing belongs to God, and by God he means himself. Every poultice you sell, every charm you whisper is theft from his authority. You bow your head as he passes, as any good villager would. He doesn't stop you, not today. He rarely does in the market. Too public, too messy. But his gaze is a warning. Coins can be stolen, herbs can be lost, but suspicion sticks like tar. The women's exchange later near the bread stalls. 2 women sidle up to you. Their aprons smell of yeast, their hands dusted white. They don't speak at first, just hover until you acknowledge them. Finally, the younger whispers, "My sister, she's with child. The midwife says the birth will be hard. Do you have anything?" This is the most dangerous request of all. Childbirth is the edge between life and death, miracle and curse. If you help and the child dies, you're guilty. If you don't help and the child dies, you're guilty anyway. You hesitate, then pull a bundle of lavender from your cloak. Hang this near her bed. Boil some in water for her to breathe. The women nod quickly, pressing a small loaf of bread into your hands. No coins, no words, just bread. Payment without evidence. That, too, is survival. As they leave, you catch sight of another woman watching from across the market. Her lips are pursed, her eyes narrowed. Will she tell the priest? Or will she come to you tonight, when her own child coughs blood? There's no predicting. Uneasy glances. Everywhere you walk, the glances follow. Some filled with need, others with contempt. Children whisper and point, daring each other to run close to you, as if brushing your cloak will make them fly or die. A man spits on the ground as you pass. Another touches his hat respectfully, quickly, as though ashamed of the gesture even as he makes it. This is the true market trade, not just herbs for coins, but suspicion for silence, gratitude for denial, fear for survival. You carry herbs in your bundle, but the real weight is invisible. The weight of being everyone's secret. Evening approaches. By late afternoon, your bundle is lighter, your purse heavier, and your heart unchanged. Tension doesn't fade just because the stalls pack up. If anything, it grows. Every transaction you made today is a seed. Some will bloom into relief, others will rot into accusation. You won't know which until the knock comes at your door. As you walk home, the priest's gaze still burns on your back. The farmer's coin presses cold in your palm. The loaf of bread, warm against your side, smells of gratitude. No one will speak. Market day is over, but its echoes will last all week, and you know that next market day, you'll do it all again. Because survival isn't just about food or coin, it's about trading danger for another 7 days of life. A charm against storms. Villagers beg you to keep their crops safe. The sky never whispers, in the village it growls. By late summer, when the wheat has grown tall and golden, when the cabbages in their neat rows seem ready to burst from their green armor, the villagers fear only one thing more than hunger: the storm. And today, the storm is coming. The first rumblings, it begins as a smudge on the horizon, a bruised shadow against the pale blue. Children stop their games and squint at it. Farmers tighten the ropes around their haystacks. Old women cross themselves and mutter prayers, half to God, half to the land itself. You see it too, from your cottage window. The clouds build like soldiers, gathering for war, black and heavy. You know what storms do here. They don't just water the fields, they rip them apart. Hailstones the size of eggs can flatten a season's worth of wheat in minutes. And so, before the first thunder rolls, the knock comes at your door. The plethry men stand there, their hats in their hands, their eyes shifting like boys caught stealing. Behind them, 2 women clutch shawls tight against the wind. You must help, one man says. His voice cracks. He's the miller, and if the wheat is lost, so is he. The storm our crops, without them, we starve. Another man adds quickly, as if to soften the plea with accusation. You've got your ways. Don't deny it. The women stay silent, eyes wide. One clutches a rosary. The other clutches nothing but the hope you'll say yes. You could refuse. You could say storms are God's will, that nothing can stop them. But you know the truth. They'll never accept that. If the storm destroys the harvest, someone must be blamed. If you don't try, that someone will be you. So you nod slowly. I'll do what I can. Their relief is a mix of gratitude and fear. Gratitude that you might help. Fear that you actually might. The gathering, you step out into the open fields, your cloak whipping around your legs as the wind rises. Villagers gather behind you, muttering prayers, clutching each other's arms. Some look at you as if you are salvation. Others look at you as if you are calling the storm yourself. You kneel in the dirt, spreading your herbs in a rough circle. Sage for cleansing, garlic for strength, lavender for calm. You sprinkle salt, precious and rare, stolen from your own table. And then, you whisper, not words of Satan, not even words of power, just words you've known since childhood. Old rhymes, half prayer, half nonsense. Words meant less to bend the storm than to bend the people watching. Because that's the real magic, not in the sky, but in their eyes. The first crash of thunder, the storm arrives with a crack that splits the sky. The villagers gasp, clutching each other. The wind whips harder, bending the wheat until it looks like an ocean of gold waves. Rain spits down, sharp and cold. You raise your arms, chanting louder, now not for the clouds, but for the crowd. You know if they believe, even for a moment, that you can hold the storm at bay, you'll survive the season. If they don't, the pyre will be built with the same wood they're saving for winter fires. A bolt of lightning forks in the distance, so close you feel it in your teeth. The people cry out. Some cross themselves, some fall to their knees, and all of them stare at you. The charm's power, and here is the cruel truth. Sometimes the storm does pass. Sometimes the hail spares the wheat. The rain softens before it drowns the soil. And when that happens, you are a miracle worker, blessed, chosen. Other times, The storm crushes everything. And then, you are witch, cursed, damned. Your actions do not change the clouds, but they change the story the villagers tell afterward. This time, the storm skirts the village. You watch as sheets of rain hammer the distant fields, tearing them to mud, while above you, the clouds cracked but hold. The wheat bends, but does not break. The hail never comes. The villagers gasp. A miracle. No one speaks it aloud, but you can see it in their faces. You did this? Gratitude that feels like fear when the storm finally drifts east, leaving only wet earth and trembling hearts. The villagers surround you. They press coins into your hands, bread into your arms. The women hug you, the men clap your shoulders with hands that shake. But behind every thanks is unease. Because if you can stop a storm, you can also call one. If you can save the harvest, you can also curse it. Gratitude slides too easily into terror. Already you can hear it in the whispers. She's blessed by God, no by the devil. Either way, best not to anger her. You smile, you nod, you take their bread, but inside, you feel the truth. Every storm you calm only brings you closer to another kind of storm, the one with torches and ropes. The priest's reaction the next morning. The priest preaches fire from the pulpit. The storm passed by not because of charms, but because of God's mercy. Do not be deceived by false healers, by women who whisper in the dark. Their hands are not blessed, they are cursed. But you notice something. When the sermon ends, he is the only one with dry bread. The rest of the villagers have already eaten what they gave you. They may fear your power, but they depend on it more. And so, the debate continues. Healer or heretic, blessing or curse. You cannot win it. You can only survive it. The eternal bargain that night, when you sit alone by your fire, the wind quiet again. You think about the bargain you've made with life. You cannot stop storms. You cannot call them. But you can give people something, just as strong. The feeling that they are not helpless. That someone, somewhere, has power. Even if only in whispers and herbs. And maybe that is the truest magic of all, because storms will always come. But so will the knock at your door. Church bells toll, you cross yourself, but some still whisper devil. The bells never ring lightly in a medieval village. When they toll, the sound rolls across the fields, through the cottages, and deep into the bones of every man, woman, and child. It is not music, it is command. A reminder that God sees all, hears all, and punishes all. On this particular morning, the bells ring longer than usual. The sound drags through the air like chains pulled across stone. You step outside your cottage, herbs drying on racks, smoke drifting from the small fire inside, and instinctively cross yourself. Because of course you cross yourself. Everyone does. To do otherwise would be madness. To do otherwise would be suicide. But as your hand moves forehead, chest, shoulder, you notice the looks. Not everyone believes your gesture. The public piety, the villagers gather in the square, faces tilted toward the church tower. The bells swing heavy, iron hearts hammering against bronze sides. Each strike is supposed to remind people of heaven. Instead, it reminds them of hell. You walk among them carefully, cloak tight, face solemn. You keep your head bowed, as though ashamed, as though humbled. It is what they expect. To appear confident is dangerous. To appear indifferent, fatal. You mouth the same prayers they mouth. You kneel when they kneel. You say the words to Christ with lips that move like theirs. And still, whispers follow. She does not mean it. She mocks the cross. She wears the sign of the beast under her cloak. The worst part, you do not know who whispers and who defends. A woman who begged you last week for a charm against fever now crosses herself harder when you pass. A farmer whose wife you helped during childbirth now spits into the mud as if to purify the ground your feet touched. Gratitude lasts hours. Fear lasts lifetimes. The priests gaze inside the church. The air smells of wax, sweat, and incense so thick it clogs the throat. The priest stands high above the congregation, framed by flickering candles. His voice booms through the rafters, rising and falling like waves meant to drown the people below. "Beware false healers," he shouts. "Beware those who claim power apart from God. For the devil works in shadows, and he wears the face of those you call neighbor." His eyes land on you as he says it. Not openly, not enough to accuse, but long enough that others notice. Long enough that murmurs ripple through the pews like wind through wheat. You bow your head deeper, fingers tight on your rosary. You whisper louder than usual, hoping others hear. "Sancta Maria, ora pro nobis." Still, you know what they're thinking. If you truly belonged here, if you truly were Christian, why would he look at you? The double cross for you. The cross is both shield and target. Wear it around your neck. And some people relax, at least she pretends. But others laugh, cruelly look at the witch, dressing herself in God's clothes. Kneel too fervently, and they'll say you're mocking. Kneel too lazily, and they'll say you're rebelling. There is no safe middle. The bells toll again, and you cross yourself with everyone else, but you feel the doubt. They don't just hear the bells as God's command, they hear them as judgment against you. The child's question after Mass. In the square, a child tugs at his mother's skirt and points at you. "Is she the one the priest means?" he asks, loud enough for several to hear. The mother flushes, dragging him away. But the question hangs in the air like smoke. "Yes," is the unspoken answer. "Yes, she is the one. Yes, she is who the priest meant." You smile at the child, but the smile only makes things worse. To some, a smile is innocence. To others, a smile is confession. Acts of devotion. You try harder. You light extra candles. You leave coins at the altar, even when you can't afford them. You join the women scrubbing the church floor on Saturdays, your knees raw from stone and water. For a few hours, they treat you as one of them. You laugh. You share bread. You listen to gossip about hens and husbands. But always the glance comes, a flicker of doubt, a whispered remark you're not meant to hear. She scrubs harder than the rest, to wash away her sins, no doubt. She gives more coins than her husband ever did. Where does she find the money? No matter what you do, they twist it into evidence. Piety becomes disguise. Charity becomes bribe. Even silence becomes suspicious. The bells at night, the worst, is when the bells toll after dark. They mean death then. Someone has passed. Or worse, someone has been taken. You lie awake in your bed, staring at the thatch roof, listening to the slow, mournful toll. And you wonder, is it warning you? Is it preparing the village for your death? Will the next toll be the one that marks your trial, your execution? And when you finally sleep, the toll follows into your dreams. The sound becomes chains. The echo becomes fire. The villagers split over time. The bells divide the village. Half the people mutter that you're dangerous. The other half mutter that you're useful. Both sides keep their opinions quiet, because both know the priest is listening at market. An old man presses a handful of onions into your palm and whispers, "Bless you." Moments later, his neighbor spits in your path and mutters, "Devil." In one breath, you are angel. In the next, you are curse. The bells keep tolling, and with every strike, the line between those roles blurs. The curse of belonging, the cruelest part, is that you want to believe. You grew up with the bells. As a child, you ran through the square when they rang, laughing with the others, clutching your mother's hand. You sang hymns with joy, not fear. You believed heaven looked down and smiled when the bells sang. Now, you can't hear them without flinching. Every toll feels like a reminder that no matter how hard you try, the village no longer believes in your innocence, and belief, in this world, is everything. Your silent rebellion one evening, as the bells toll for vespers, you cross yourself slowly, deliberately, not with fear, not with haste, but with quiet defiance. You whisper the prayer not for them, not even for God, but for yourself. Because deep down, you know this. The villagers don't truly care if you believe in Christ. They care only that they can believe in your guilt when they need to. And so, you keep crossing yourself. You keep bowing. You keep whispering the prayers. Not because you expect salvation, but because every gesture buys you another day. Another day before the whispers become words. Another day before the words become accusations. Another day before the bells toll, not for warning, not for death, but for you. Closing thought, the bells toll again the next morning. You cross yourself with everyone else done still. Someone whispers, devil. The secret notebook, scratch marks of recipes, prayers, and odd symbols. It begins with a scrap of parchment, no larger than your hand. The villagers see a scrap. You see a lifeline, hidden beneath straw in your cottage, wrapped in wool to keep the damp away, lies your most dangerous possession, a notebook. Not the kind scholars own, not the richly bound tomes priests parade around, just stitched together scraps of vellum. The rough leftovers no one else wanted. On its pages, your entire life. Recipes scribbled in crooked Latin, herbal notes written, half in prayer, half in secrecy. Symbols that are not quite crosses, not quite stars. Some you don't even remember where you learned. And in this fragile, ink-stained mess lies both your salvation and your damnation. Why you wrote memory is fickle. Herbs must be gathered at the right moon, the right season, at dawn or dusk. Forget one detail, and the poultice heals nothing, or worse, it kills. So you wrote. At first, it was simple. Fever boil, willow bark, sleep poppy seed, in wine. But words are slippery, and soon you added more. Notes about which prayers calmed frightened mothers, which charms quieted restless cows, which whispered rhymes made children laugh, even through sickness. It grew, page after page, years of knowledge, gathered like firewood. You never meant for it to look suspicious, but how could it not? Latin beside prayers, crosses beside spirals, Christian blessings beside something older. To you, it is survival. To them, it is witchcraft. The risk of writing. The priest preaches that books are holy things, but not your book. Yours was not blessed, not written by monk or scribe. It carries no gilded edges, no seal of the church. It was stitched by your hands, written by candlelight with ink you made from soot and vinegar. That makes it dangerous. In the eyes of the village, words belong to priests. Knowledge belongs to God. If you hold either, you must have stolen it. You know this. Still, you write, because without it, you would be blind. And blindness kills. The symbols. The most dangerous part of your notebook isn't the words. It's the symbols. Some are borrowed from charms whispered by your grandmother. Some are copied from carvings on stones outside the village, stones the priest told you never to touch. Some you drew yourself, when no prayers seemed strong enough. To outsiders, they look like nonsense. Circles inside circles, stars with too many points, lines that curve, like snakes. But to you, each has meaning. A spiral to remind you which way to stir a potion. A star to mark herbs that grow only under moonlight. A knot of lines to show which plants cancel each other's poison. Without them, your recipes are meaningless. With them, you are marked. The villager who saw one afternoon, as you flipped through the pages to check a fever cure. You didn't hear the door creak. A neighbor stood there, Henrik, the cooper. His face went pale when he saw the notebook on the table. "What's that?" he asked, voice low, eyes wide. You snapped it shut, heart hammering. "Just notes. Nothing." He didn't believe you. He stared too long at the edges, where ink bled, through lines that didn't look like prayers. You handed him bread, tried to laugh it off, begged him with your eyes. Finally, he muttered something about needing to fix a barrel and left. But ever since, you've noticed him crossing himself twice when you pass. The book is friend despite the fear. The notebook is your only friend who never turns. When villagers whisper, it listens. When priests threaten, it stays. When you feel lost, it reminds you page after page that you know things no one else dares to know. It is not devil's work. It is memory. It is medicine. It is hope. But you also know this. If they ever find it, it will not matter what it means to you. The night writing. Night. When the village sleeps, you pull it from its hiding place. You light the smallest candle, shield the flame with your hand, and write in tiny strokes, careful not to waste ink. Your wrist cramps. Your eyes ache. The candle burns low, but still you write. Because tomorrow, someone will knock, asking for a cure. Tomorrow, someone will beg for a charm against storms. Tomorrow, someone will hand you their child, sick and trembling, and you must not forget. Every word you write tonight could save a life. Tomorrow, and every word you write tonight could hang you next week. The weight of secrets. Sometimes you wonder if the book has grown heavier. When you carry it, hidden under your cloak, it feels like stone. As if the pages are not just parchment, but scenes pressed together, bound tight. You dream that the priest finds it. You dream that the villagers tear it apart, piece by piece, while shouting words you cannot bear to hear. And sometimes, you dream the opposite, that centuries from now, someone else finds it. Someone who does not call you witch, who reads your words and whispers, "She was wise." You do not know which dream is crueler. Pages of contradiction. The strangest part is how the book holds contradictions side by side. One page is a recipe for fever. Crush willow bark and boil in water. Add honey to ease the bitterness. The next page, say 3 paternosters while stirring. Sprinkle holy water at dawn. The page after that, a crude star inside a circle, with the word protect scratched. Beneath. Science, beside faith, beside superstition. To you, it is one tapestry. To them, it is proof of heresy. But how could you separate them? In this world, medicine is not just plants. Healing is not just prayer. Belief itself is the strongest ingredient. The hidden page at the back of the notebook, pressed flat and nearly invisible, is the page you never let anyone see. On it, you've written names, not herbs, not prayers, names. The women who came before you, the ones who taught you charms, whispered secrets, shared knowledge in shadows. Some are dead, some disappeared, some burned. You write them down so they are not forgotten. Because if you are caught, if you vanish, someone must remember. The page trembles in your hands each time you see it, as if the names themselves know the danger. The fear of losing it. Sometimes you think about destroying it, burning it in your hearth, scattering the ashes, freeing yourself from the weight. But the thought makes your chest ache. To burn the notebook would be to burn your mother's wisdom, your grandmother's prayers, every secret handed down through whispers. Without it, you would still live, but you would not be you, so you keep it, even knowing it may kill you. Especially knowing that. The notebook's fate. One day, the priest will ask again about false healers. One day, the villagers will whisper louder. One day, someone will point at your house and say, "She writes." And on that day, the notebook will decide your fate. If they find it, the pages will be read aloud at trial, twisted into curses. Each word proof of guilt. If they never find it, perhaps it will outlive you. Perhaps it will be hidden in the earth, waiting for hands, less afraid to open it. Until then, it rests beneath the straw, silent, waiting, watching. And every night, as the bells toll in the distance, you whisper a prayer, not for your soul, but for your book. Let it survive me. Animal companions. A black cat purrs, but neighbors see only omens. It starts with a sound, not the creak of the church door, not the whisper of neighbors outside your window, not even the sigh of the priest as he mutters about witches and demons. No, the sound is smaller, softer, a low purr, a vibration against your hand, steady as a heartbeat. The sound of your cat, The arrival you never chose her. She chose you. One winter evening, when the snow lay like a burial shroud over the fields, you opened your cottage door to bring in firewood. And there she was, a thin scrap of fur, black as soot, green eyes glinting in the moonlight. She did not beg. She did not run. She simply stared, unblinking, as if she had been waiting. You let her in. You shouldn't have, but you did. Since then, she has followed you from hearth to garden, from market to meadow. She curls on your lap as you grind herbs. She prowls the rafters, chasing mice that would otherwise spoil your stores. She sleeps at your feet, her warmth like a second blanket, in a world of suspicion. She is the only creature that does not question you, but to the villagers, she is not a cat. She is an omen. The villagers' eyes, they notice her before they notice. You mark it. When she weaves between your skirts, they murmur, "Did you see? Black as midnight. Not a single white hair. That's not natural." When you pass the church, they cross themselves twice. Children whisper that she talks to you. At night, men joked, though never too loudly, that you feed her from a silver spoon like a queen. And women, those who sometimes knock on your door at dusk asking for charms or herbs, glance nervously at the cat sitting in your window. They want your help, but they do not want her. Every purr she makes, they hear as a spell. Every flick of her tail, they see as a curse. Familiar, not pet you. Do not call her pet. That word feels too small. She is your companion, your shadow, your confidant. Some nights, when fear gnaws at you, you whisper into her first secrets. You could never tell another soul. She listens, always listens. Sometimes you think she understands. When you speak of hunger, she hunts. When you speak of sorrow, she presses her head to your hand. When you speak of danger, she growls before you hear the knock at the door. Is that not magic, or is it only love? You cannot tell anymore. Legends around cats. The priest warns from the pulpit. Beware, the witch is familiar. The devil himself takes shape in beastly form, whispering wickedness into her ear. And what beast does he name first? Always the cat, always black. The villagers nod. They've heard the stories. Cats that guard witches' secrets. Cats that drink blood. Cats that steal the breath from infants. Cats that walk between worlds, slipping from shadow to shadow, carrying whispers from hell itself. You know these tales. You know how much fear can cling to a simple animal. But when she curls in your lap, purring, kneading your apron with her paws, you cannot reconcile those stories with the warmth against your skin. The mouse in the church once. During Lent, your cat slipped into the church. You chased after her, heart hammering, but it was too late. She padded down the aisle as the priest read from scripture. She paused before the altar, green eyes glowing in the candlelight, and in her mouth dangled a mouse. The congregation gasped. Someone cried, "An omen." The priest went pale. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. "The Lord tests us with vermin." You scooped her up, cradling her against your chest, whispering apologies. The whispers around you followed. Home. That night, you hid the cat beneath your cloak, but still the villagers remembered. Still, they muttered, "The witch's beast defiles the holy place." The line between fear and need here is the strangest part. Some who fear her also depend on her. When the miller's barn filled with rats, who did he call? Not the priest, not the bailiff, you, with your cat. She spent nights in that barn, eyes gleaming in the dark, and by week's end, the rats were gone. The miller thanked you, pressed bread into your hands, muttered blessings over your cat. But later, in the tavern, he called her unnatural. They need her teeth. They fear her shadow. Both at once. When the cat disappears, sometimes she vanishes for days. No warning. One evening she curls by the fire, and the next morning she is gone. You search the fields, call into the woods, leave scraps of food by the door. Nothing. Days stretch into nights, and you imagine everything, that she has been killed. that she has abandoned you, that she has turned into smoke and slipped through the cracks of the world, and then always she returns. Thin, wild-eyed, carrying scents of places you cannot name. She never explains. She never needs to. You simply hold her, bury your face in her fur, and pretend you do not feel the villagers' stares through the window. The stories you tell yourself to survive their whispers. You tell yourself stories. Maybe she is more than a cat. Maybe she is your mother's spirit, returned to guard you. Maybe she is an angel in disguise, sent not with wings, but with claws. Maybe she is proof that the world still holds mysteries, not all of them cruel. You tell yourself these stories, because the alternative, that she is just a cat, and yet they might kill you for loving her, is too bitter to swallow. The threat one evening, you hear boys in the lane, laughing. One shouts, "Throw a stone at the witch's cat." Your blood freezes. You press the cat to your chest, hide her beneath your shawl, whisper, "Stay quiet." The boys pass. The laughter fades, but your hands still shake long after, because you know, laughter can turn to fire. A stone can turn to torch. A prank can turn to accusation. And in their eyes, the cat is never just a cat. She is proof. She is evidence. She is enough to damn you both. Why you keep her so? Why keep her? Why risk everything for a creature that could betray you with nothing but her fur? Because without her, the silence would be unbearable. Because her purr drowns out the whispers. Because her green eyes remind you that not all gazes are filled with suspicion. Because in a world that wants to strip you of humanity, she gives it back. You would rather burn with her in your arms than live without her. What historians wonder centuries from now, scholars will puzzle over witches' cats. Were they truly believed to be demons? Were they simply scapegoats, victims of superstition? Were they loyal companions or tools of ritual? They will argue in books, footnotes, lectures. They will draw diagrams of medieval bestiaries. Note how cats shifted from sacred to cursed. How fear bent an animal into a symbol of the devil. But they will never hear the purr in the dark. They will never feel the warmth of a cat pressed against a frightened heart. They will never know why you risked everything to keep her. The end of the tale, someday, perhaps, they will come for you. They will shout, demand, accuse. They will search your cottage, overturn your herbs, seize your notebook, and when they find the cat, because they will, she never hides, they will hold her aloft, point, and declare, "Here is the witch's familiar." They will not see the mousetrap she is, the comfort she brings, the love she carries. They will see only omen, curse, proof, and you will stand there, silent, as she struggles in their hands. And you will pray not for your soul, but for hers, because she was never the devil. She was only yours. Evening visitors arrive. Lovers seek potions. Merchants want luck. The day has been long, but the night is never quiet. By sunset, the village exhales a different kind of breath. The streets empty, shutters close, dogs curl beneath doorways. But your door, your little crooked wooden door at the edge of the lane, does not stay silent, because evening is when they come. The first knock, it always begins with a knock, soft at first, as if the knocker hopes not to be heard by anyone but you. Tap tap, a pause, tap tap again. You know the rhythm. It's not the firm knock of a priest or bailiff. It's hesitant, almost shy, and you know what it means. Someone wants something they cannot ask for in daylight. You lift the latch. There she is, a young woman, cheeks flushed with cold, eyes darting over her shoulder. She slips inside as though the shadows themselves chase her. She wastes no time with greetings. She whispers, "I need a potion for love." Her hands tremble. She won't meet your eyes. You do not laugh. You do not ask if she is sure. Instead, you nod. You've seen this before. You've heard the same tremor in many voices. Because love, in this village, is a battlefield. Love potions, the ingredients are simple enough. A sprig of rosemary, a pinch of thyme, a drop of honey stirred 3 times clockwise. But it's not the herbs that matter, it's the belief. You grind the leaves in your mortar, whispering not spells, but reassurances. She watches, her eyes wide, as though your every movement carries holy power. Will it work? She asks. You do not lie. If he already looks at you, it may nudge his heart closer. If he does not, it may at least give you courage. She clutches the vial, as though it were a holy relic, presses coins into your hand, and vanishes back into the night. Tomorrow, she will smile brighter. Perhaps he will notice, perhaps not. But tonight, she believes. And that belief is worth more than the potion itself. Lovers in the dark, she is not the only one. Some nights, a boy comes instead, barely grown, his hands blistered from farm work, his voice breaking between courage and fear. He begs for a charm to make a girl notice him. Other times, an older woman arrives, her face lined with years. She doesn't ask for a love potion. She asks for one that will end love or at least silence the unwanted advances of a neighbor who won't take no for an answer. And only once a married woman came, eyes wet with tears, begging for something stronger, not to spark love, not to end it, but to hide the swelling in her belly from a man who would kill her for it. That night, you could not sleep, because the potion you gave her wasn't just herbs. It was risk, it was danger, it was survival. The merchants, not all who come seek love, some seek fortune. The merchants arrive in cloaks, heavy boots thudding against your threshold. They smell of ale and horses, of dust from far-off roads. They smile too easily, but their eyes shift nervously, as though afraid someone might see them here. They ask for charms to bring luck on journeys, for herbs to guard against thieves, for powders to scatter in their stalls, to draw buyers. One merchant, bold enough to laugh at the very idea of witchcraft, still pressed a silver coin into your hand for a sachet of dried lavender. For the smell, he said. But you saw how carefully he tucked it into his satchel, as if it were a shield. Another merchant asked for a curse. Not openly, not with that word, but the meaning was clear. He wanted a rival's goods to spoil, his cart to break, his trade to fail. You refused. Even witches must draw lines. But he left with bitterness in his eyes, and bitterness is more dangerous than any curse. Whispers after dark, your neighbors whisper that only sinners visit you at night, that only those who consort with devils need your remedies. But the truth is simpler and sadder. They come because they are human, because they want what the church does not give, because they want love, luck, and power over their own lives, even if only a sip at a time, and because the night hides what the day condemns. The cost of beliefs. Each visitor leaves something behind: coins, bread, wool, sometimes eggs tucked carefully into baskets. But payment is not always material. Some leave guilt, heavy as stone. Some leave hope, fragile as glass. Some leave fear, looking back over their shoulders, terrified someone saw them at your door. And you are left with secrets. Too many secrets, crowding your little house like ghosts. When you sleep, you dream of all the faces, all the voices, all the whispered pleas. You wonder how long you can carry them before the weight crushes you. When love fails, not every story ends in happiness. You remember the girl with the rosemary potion. Weeks later, she returned, tears streaking her face. "It didn't work," she sobbed. "He doesn't love me. He never will." You offered her tea, comfort, silence, but you could not give her what she truly wanted. Another girl accused you of cursing her. She drank your potion, but the boy married another. She stood in the lane, shouting, calling you liar, witch, fraud. Others heard. That night, you buried the remaining vial deep in the garden, as though the earth itself could swallow the accusation. The fear in every knock. Every time you hear that evening knock, your heart leaps, not with excitement, with fear, because someday it will not be a girl in love or a merchant with coins. Someday it will be men with torches, their knock not hesitant, but furious. Someday, the visitors will not come for potions, but for proof, and your own secrets will not save you then. What historians say centuries later, historians will argue, were these evening visits real? Did witches sell potions, or were they accused unfairly? Did villagers truly believe in charms, or were they only desperate for comfort in a harsh world? The scholars will debate, cite records, analyze trials, but they will never hear the midnight knock. They will never see the fear in a young woman's eyes as she clutches a vial like it is salvation. They will never smell the mingling of rosemary and desperation in a candlelit room. They will never know that sometimes belief is the strongest potion of all. The quiet after when the last visitor leaves, when the lane grows still, you close the shutters and sit in silence. Your cat curls against your lap. The herbs crackle in the fire's heat. The coins on your table gleam faintly in the candlelight, and you wonder, are you healer, helper, fraught, or witch? Or are you simply the only one, willing to answer the door when the world grows dark? The ritual circle, candles, chalk, and doubt flicker in the dark night falls thicker tonight. The villagers are asleep, or pretending to be, but your little hut at the edge of the forest still glows faintly from within. The shutters are drawn, the door is locked, but inside, the air is heavy with preparation, because tonight is not for love potions or fever cures. Tonight is for something older, something heavier, something the church would condemn with fire and rope if they saw. Tonight is for the circle, the clearing you step outside with a bundle of candles under your arm, a pouch of chalk at your belt, and the weight of secrecy pressing down on your shoulders. The clearing in the woods is quiet, almost unnaturally so. No crickets sing, no owls hoot. Even the trees seem to lean closer, curious or warning. You kneel, spreading the pouch open. The chalk is coarse, crumbly, ground from limestone you collected weeks ago. Your fingers shake as you draw, not because the chalk is fragile, but because you are a circle, always a circle. The line doesn't have to be perfect. Nature itself is never perfect, but you try. Every break in the line, every crack in the earth feels like an invitation for doubt to creep in. When the circle is complete, you place the candles at its edges. 12 flames to mark the 12 months. 12 guardians against whatever the night might bring. Why a circle? Historians will argue centuries later whether witches truly drew circles, whether the rituals recorded in trial documents were fact or invention. But here, now, the circle is not theory, it is safety, a boundary between the world you know and the world you don't, a space where your will matters more than chaos, where light pushes back against darkness both, outside and within. You whisper, as you draw, not in Latin, not in some demonic tongue, but in the plain words of your village dialect. Hold firm, hold safe, let harm pass by. The church might call it blasphemy, but to you, it is simply prayer by another name. The doubt when the candles are lit, when the circle glows faintly in the dark clearing, you stand at its edge and hesitate. What now? What do you hope to accomplish tonight? A blessing for the crops, a vision of the future, a binding against the sickness that has crept through the livestock. You tell yourself it is for protection, for healing, for the village that needs you, even as it whispers against you. But deep down, you know another truth. Part of you performs the ritual for yourself, because when you stand inside the circle, you feel powerful. You feel like your whispered words can shape the night. You feel, if only for a moment, that you are not small, not helpless, not one bad harvest away from ruin like everyone else. And yet, that feeling is followed swiftly by guilt. Is this pride? Is this sin? Is this the devil's trick, making you think you hold power, when in truth you are only deluding yourself with chalk and wax? The doubt flickers like the candlelight. It always does. The candles, each flame bends with the night air, as though listening. Their light does not banish the dark, kit carves it into sharper edges. The shadows dance, twisting into shapes that look like faces, figures, watchers. Your heart races. You know the mind can trick itself in firelight. You know shadows are only shadows, and yet you cannot shake the thought, what if you are not alone? The invocation or voice trembles as you begin. You speak the names of herbs, of saints, of seasons. You call upon earth, air, fire, and water not as gods, but as neighbors. You ask them to guard the village, to spare the animals, to ease the childbirths of women who will never thank you openly. The words are simple, rhythmic. Some rhyme, some don't. They aren't spells, as scholars might later imagine. They're half prayers, half folk songs, whispered into the night with more hope than certainty. You close your eyes and sway slightly, listening to the crackle of wax and the rustle of branches. For a moment, you feel suspended between worlds, one foot in the dirt, 1 foot in a mystery no priest has ever described. The fear of being seen, every twig snap makes you flinch. Every gust of wind feels like footsteps behind you. If anyone from the village followed you here, if they saw the circle, the candles, the whispered words, it would not matter what you intended. They would not hear prayers. They would not see protection. They would see a witch at work. They would see the devil's servant, consorting with darkness in the woods, and they would tell. The image burns in your mind, torches, shouting, the heavy hand of the priest, pulling you from your home. Rope, fire, ash. Your voice falters. The doubt grows louder than your prayers. The breaking point, there comes a moment when you wonder, should you stop? Should you snuff the candles, scatter the chalk, walk home and pretend none of this ever happened? Wouldn't that be safer? But you remember the mother who begged you to cure her child's fever. You remember the farmer who swore your charm kept the storm away. You remember the girl who clutched her love potion like it was hope itself. And you know that if you stop now, you will stop forever. Fear will win, so you keep going. A flicker in the dark, one candle sputters. The flame bends, nearly dies, then steadies again. You freeze. Superstition whispers that a candle flickering means something has entered the circle. A spirit, an omen, a presence not your own. You swallow hard. You tell yourself it is only the wind. But still you whisper louder. Your hands tremble as you trace the air with shapes, as though sketching barriers that your chalk cannot reach. The candle steadies, the shadows still, and you, your heart-pounding, whisper the last words of the ritual with every ounce of conviction you have left. The aftermath, when the final word is spoken, when the last breath leaves your lungs, the clearing feels lighter, not safe, not holy, but different. You do not know if it worked. You never know. You only know that you tried. You snuff the candles one by one, letting smoke curl into the night. You scatter dirt over the chalk, disguising the circle. You tuck the pouch away, hide the wax stubs, and walk home with quick steps, every rustle of leaves chasing you. What remains back in your hut? You sit by the fire, clutching your knees. Your cat stares at you as though it knows where you've been. The smell of smoke clings to your hands. Your lips taste of ash. Did you help the village? Did you anger God? Did you waste chalk and wax on nothing more than fear and fantasy? You do not know. You will never know. But tomorrow, when someone knocks on your door, you will answer. And if they ask you to whisper a charm, to grind a herb, to light a candle, you will. Because doubt may flicker, but so does hope. And sometimes, in the dark, that is enough. Trial in whispers. The priest wonders aloud if your blessed or damned morning comes heavy. You haven't truly slept since the ritual. The taste of smoke still coats your throat. The smell of wax lingers on your skin, and every creak of the floorboards in your hut sounds like a footstep coming for you. But when the church bells toll, there is no excuse. Everyone must attend. So you go the walk to the church, your boots crunch over frost. The air smells of wood smoke and manure. But the village itself smells of something sharper - suspicion. Eyes follow you. They always do, but today feels different. Not just curiosity, not just gossip. Something heavier, sharpened overnight. Did someone see your circle? Did someone hear your whispers? Or is this only your guilt turning stares into daggers? The priest, Father Matthias, waits at the door. His robes are plain but heavy, the kind of cloth meant to signal both piety and authority. His face is not unkind, but it is unreadable. Carved in that stern neutrality priests seem to cultivate like a second skin. He greets each villager with a blessing, a hand raised, a muttered Pax Vobiscum. When you step forward, his eyes linger. Too long, just a beat, just a pause. But long enough that the air between you thickens. Peace be with you, he says. And then softer. If peace truly walks with you, a riddle, a test, a trap, you force yourself to nod. But his gaze follows you even as you shuffle to a bench. The sermon, the mass is like every other, prayers mumbled, incense thick, candles flickering. Yet the sermon today feels aimed directly at you. Father Matthias speaks of wheat and tears, of how good seed can be choked by weeds. He speaks of angels and demons walking unseen among men. He speaks of healers who heal not by God's grace, but by darker means, and the villagers listen. Some nod solemnly. Some glance sideways toward you. Your palms sweat. Your breath shortens. The sermon is not accusation, not yet, but it is close. So close. The whispered court after mass. Villagers cluster outside the church. They speak in low tones, as if gossip were a holy ritual in itself. She helped my boy when he was sick. Yes, but at what price? Her charms keep the cows healthy. Or maybe she cursed them first. The trial has already begun, not in the priest's hands, not in a courtroom, but in whispers. And whispers are sharper than any sword. The priest approaches Father Matthias, steps into the circle of gossip like a shepherd among sheep. His voice cuts through the murmurs. Blessings may come from God, he says, but so too can temptations come from the enemy. We must discern carefully. We must not confuse heresy with holiness. His eyes meet yours, and in that moment, you are both accused and defended. He does not name you. He does not have to. The villagers already know. Your defense, what would you even say, if asked, that your herbs cure sickness? They would say, herbs are natural, but your success is unnatural. That your prayers call for protection, they would say. Prayer is for priests, not peasants. That you do not summon demons. They would ask how you know the language of demons. Well enough to deny it. Every defense you imagine sounds like guilt. You want to scream, to shout that you are only trying to help, that if God did not want you to heal, he would not have given you hands, or herbs, or voice. But shouting would only prove their suspicion. The test sometimes, when priests doubted a villager, they proposed a test. Touch the holy relic if you are innocent, you will not tremble. Recite the crit if you stumble. Your tongue betrays you. Plunge your hand into boiling water. If God protects you, you will heal unscathed. Father Matthias does not order such a test today, but his silence, his watchful eyes, feel like a test in themselves. Every movement, every word, every blink you make is weighed, blessed or damned. He has not decided. The child tugs at his mother's sleeve, pointing at you. That's the lady who made my cough go away, he says. The mother hushes him quickly, glancing nervously at the priest. Gratitude is dangerous when it points to someone outside the church. Gratitude can turn to accusation in an instant. The boy doesn't understand. He only smiles at you. That smile is both salvation and curse. Salvation, because it reminds you of why you do what you do. Curse, because it proves others have seen your power, and children's words, innocent as they are, can condemn faster than an enemy's. The priests whisper later, As the crowd disperses, Father Matthias passes near. You. He leans close, low enough that only you hear. Do you believe your gifts are from God? He asks. His voice is not angry, not condemning, almost curious, but you hear the blade under the words. Answer wrong, and you are doomed. Answer right, and you might still be doomed, depending on what he believes the right answer is. You swallow hard. Your mouth is dry. Yes, you whisper. Yes, I believe so. He studies you for a heartbeat longer. Then he nods and walks away. No blessing, no curse, only silence. And that silence is worse than fire. The aftermath. The village begins to treat you differently. Not openly, not yet, but subtly. Some keep their distance, as if your shadow might stain them. Others come to you more quietly than before, at night, in secret, begging for help, but never speaking of it in daylight. A few avoid your eyes altogether, as though eye contact itself could drag them into damnation. You are neither condemned nor absolved. You are suspended, balanced on the knife's edge of rumor. Every whisper could be your undoing. What the trial really is, historians, centuries later, will debate whether which trials were about religion, or control, or fear of women, or simply the human urge to blame someone when crops failed. But here, in this village, you understand the truth. The trial is not a gavel striking wood. The trial is not a rope thrown over a beam. The trial is whispers. Every murmur in the market, every sermon, laced with suspicion, every look from the priest that lasts a second too long. You are tried every day, in every breath, in every sideways glance, and there is no verdict but survival. Alone, again that night. You sit in your hut, staring at the fire. The ritual circle feels far away, though it was only last night. The candles are gone, the chalk washed away, but the doubt remains. Blessed or damned? You don't know. The priest doesn't know. The village doesn't know, and perhaps that not knowing is the sharpest punishment of all. You whisper into the flames, voice trembling. If I am yours, Lord, protect me. If I am not, then why did you give me these hands? The fire pops, spits, crackles. No answer comes. Only silence, and so, the trial continues.